Hello everyone, and welcome to our fifth, and that's the final episode of our series dedicated to helping you, small business owners, master your cash flow. I'm really thrilled to be joined by Philip King, former small business commissioner and tight cash flow expert. Hi, Philip. How are you doing?
I was on mute. It wasn't very clever. I'm well, thank you, Val.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Philip. We've got a very exciting topic today on how and when to chase an overdue invoice properly. So really excited about this. But before we start, just a very quick tour of Zoom. Depending on how your Zoom is set up, you either have a toolbox at the top or the bottom of your screen. We will be doing Q&As at the end of this. So please do make sure you have your Q&A box open and the chat open. So the chat, if you have any comments, just like Penny and Othman, shared on the chat, please write your comments there. And for any questions, put them in the Q&A. We will have 15 minutes dedicated to really go through your questions. So please put them in the Q&A box for Philip. Yes, so okay, just as a way of introduction, we're just going to introduce ourselves first, and then we'll go on to the masterclass. But I'm Valentin Hutchings, and I'm part of the team here at Tide. And for those who are new to Tide and what we do, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of our services. So we are the fastest growing online current account provider in the UK, and we are used by over 350,000 businesses. And the whole reason why Tide exists is just to save small business owners both time and money when it comes to their business banking, so that they can actually focus on growing the business, which is why you start a business. We take the saving of time very seriously. So the sign up process is very quick and easy. It takes usually about 5 to 10 minutes. You get your sort code, account number, the card follows up in the post a few days later. But one thing I did wanted to mention is that the app is really built with features that are dedicated to help small business owners manage their business admin. So there's loads of different tools, just like our auto categorization tool categorizes all your transaction for you. Invoice Future helps you create, customize, send professional invoices, particularly relevant for this masterclass. I know Philip will mention it a bit later on, because we also have the Invoice Assistant add-on tool, which chases your invoice for you. So that's a good one to know about. And of course, we have our cash flow insight tool, particularly relevant here as well. But, we'll talk a bit more about this during the masterclass. This fifth episode of our series is the whole series dedicated to helping you master your cash flow that we created with Philip. If you haven't watched our previous episode, in the first episode, we talked about why cash flow should be a top priority for your business. In the second, we discussed the importance of knowing your customer. Then our third, we talked about the importance of negotiating the payment terms that work for your business. And in episode 4, which was last month, we talked about the invoice process and how to make sure it gets processed by your clients. In this fifth episode, we are going to cover how and when to properly chase an overdue invoice. So really, without further ado, let's start the event with some introduction. I've introduced myself, but I'm going to let Philip introduce himself as well.
Hello, Val, and good morning to everybody who's tuned in this morning to this webinar. My name is Philip King, as Val said. I was a small business commissioner for a while. Prior to that, I spent 42 years working in credit management, including 14 years as the chief executive of the Chartered Institute of Credit Management. I'm passionate about all things to do with cash flow, small businesses, and credit management. And I believe that the management of cash flow effectively enables SMEs to survive and flourish. And that's why I'm so keen to be working with Tide in driving awareness and education around how to make cash flow work better. I'm looking forward to sharing with you this morning, and that's enough from me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Philip, for being here for this final episode. Very exciting to conclude this with some great tips from you about how to chase an overdue invoice. We've introduced ourselves. We'd love to know a bit more about you. So I'm just going to launch a poll that is asking you, how long ago did you start your business? If you should see it on your screen. If you can answer, we'd love to know. Great, I can see a few answers. Okay, all right. 1 year, 5 years. Great. Thank you so much. So I can see that 33% of you launched a year ago, 33% of you as well, 2 to 5 years ago, and 17% 5 to 10 years ago, and 17% again 10 plus years ago. Wow, that's a fantastic mix. Congratulations to the very long-lasting business of 10 years plus. That's really impressive. And congratulations as well to the one that I've launched a year ago. That would have been during the pandemic. So that would have been quite a journey. So yeah, well done to all of you, and fantastic to have you coming along to get tips on better mastering your cash flow. Just ending the poll now. Thank you so much for taking the poll. But yeah, I think on this note, Philip, no matter the size of the business, right, and that's what we've been saying for the past 4 masterclasses, no matter the size of your small business, cash flow and financial forecasting is always going to be the utmost important for the health of your business. And when we were preparing this masterclass, you mentioned that getting invoices paid is key to the survival of a business, and it's crucial that when they are unpaid on time, they are chased quickly, professionally, and effectively. So Philip, for the first question, why is it important to know what invoices and when they are due?
Well, it doesn't matter how big a business is or how new or old it is, cash flow is still vital. And that's why tools like the Tides Cash Flow Insights tool are so effective and helpful in managing cash flow. But fundamentally, businesses need to know what they're owed and when. And it's a common temptation for small businesses to raise an invoice, send it out, and leave it out there and sort of expect it to be paid at some point. And you really need to know exactly what you're owed and when, if you're going to stay in control of your cash flow. So the Tide app, which I use personally for my business, enables you to see at a glance which invoices are outstanding, whether they're overdue or due, and so on, which is really good. But whether you use the Tide app or another software tool, an Excel spreadsheet, or even the back of an envelope, somewhere have a note of who owes you what, when they owe it to you, and when it should be paid. If you don't know that, how do you know how much money you've got coming in and when? And more importantly, how do you know when to chase invoices that haven't been paid? So make sure you've got a process for logging invoices that you raise, so you know that they're going to be due and when. Have a routine for checking that payments have arrived for them or that they haven't. Make sure you've got a really clear understanding of what is owed to the business. In the previous webinars, we talked about the why, who, when, and how. All of these things are really important, getting to the point where we can be paid. But the where, which we're looking at this morning, is really around, where is my money? I've provided you with some goods or services. When you asked me to provide them, they're fit for purpose. They're what you asked me to deliver. So why haven't you paid me? I have a reasonable expectation that just as you expect me to deliver on time, I should expect you to pay on time. But if I don't know what's due and when, I can't be in control of that. And I need to be absolutely in control. And it's interesting that particularly for some larger businesses, they can be very unimpressed if a small business doesn't chase invoices for payment, because it suggests that the business hasn't got a professional approach to its cash flow management, and that doesn't bode well for the future of the business. So being absolutely crystal clear, who owes you what, how much they owe you, when it's due, and being aware of what it is and having a system for logging it is really important. And I can only reiterate, it doesn't matter whether you use an app for that, an Excel spreadsheet, or a scrap of paper, but somewhere, or a diary or a calendar, just jot down who owes you how much and when, so that you're able to chase, and we'll come on to that in a moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, timing is absolutely key, right? So we did run a few polls on our social media channels to see if our followers were chasing large invoices before they became due. And I'm going to launch this poll as well, because we'd love to know, this should be appearing on your screen now. Do you chase large invoices before they become due? So our followers on Twitter, 60% said no, and on Instagram it's 37%, so almost 40%, that don't chase them before they become due. So okay, I'm seeing here, I'm going to let the poll a bit more. Okay, thank you so much. If you see the poll on your screen, please take it. Okay, here in the masterclass attendees, 75% of you are not chasing the invoice before a big invoice before they become due. So Philippe, what do you think of those stats, and what are your tips essentially to make sure that we can stay on top of big overdue invoices?
It doesn't surprise me, Val, that businesses don't chase invoices before they're due. When I talk to businesses about that, they say, well, I can't harass a customer before the invoice is even due. That wouldn't be right. They'd be really offended if I did that, and so on. There's a natural reluctance to ask for money anyway. We're all embarrassed by having to do that. And many small businesses resist having to do so. But if you've got a large invoice that's due for payment, it's really important to be confident that it's in the system of your customer and on its way through, and money will come out when you expect it. If you don't know it's there, you get to the due date, it hasn't been paid, you chase, and then you find out that it's still way back in the system or hasn't even been processed. I may have said this on a previous masterclass, but I raised an invoice on a business not that long ago. It wasn't paid and I chased it, and I'd not even been set up as a supplier on the system. So they couldn't process my invoice. It was just sat somewhere in the ether. Once that was sorted, it was paid really quickly. But if that had been a large sum of money on which my business was dependent to pay the wages or the rent or a key supplier, I could have been in real trouble. So it's really important to know. And the way to do that is to ring your customer a week after you sent the invoice. Has it been received? Is there anything wrong with it? Is it okay? Do you need any more information from me that I can help you with to make sure it's okay? And is it now going through the system, please? That's not harassment, that's good customer service. And I think it needs to be seen in that light, that if you can check, a week after you've raised it, that it's in the system, then you're going to be more confident that it comes out the system. And if you've got the name of the person that told you it was in the system, you've got someone to follow up with if payment doesn't arrive when you expect.
Yeah.
But even for smaller amounts, if you're not going to be chasing ahead of time, you really must chase immediately they become due. I talk to so many small business owners who just say, well, I assume it's going to come out at some point, so I just wait and see. And then when it doesn't, I go back and I find out it's been blocked in the system somewhere. So immediately it becomes due for payment, you should be chasing. Ideally on the day it's due, but certainly within 48 hours of it becoming overdue. That suggests and demonstrates that you're professional in running your business, and that's really important. It also makes sure that if there is a problem, you can resolve that problem quickly and get it paid. If you subscribe to the Tide invoice system, then you can use that to chase for you. But if not, a simple email, a simple phone call, and so on. And just making sure that you chase up immediately it's due. And be polite, professional, and persistent. This is a business transaction. You've supplied a product or service, you should be paid for it. So this is just the other side of the equation. If you hadn't delivered the goods when you promised, someone would have been chasing you. You're just as entitled to chase for money that should be in your account when you do that. And when you're chasing, make sure you have all the right details to hand. Have the invoice number, the order number, the details of the goods that were supplied, the people that have been involved in the process up to date, so that you can really make sure that the person on the other end can answer your question meaningfully and not just go away and say, I'll have a look and see what I can find out. And don't be fobbed off. If someone says, I don't know, I'll come back to you, then when will you come back to me? How will you come back to me? Make sure that you are really professional and persistent in what you do, but always be polite.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important what you mentioned in terms of the mindset of you've provided the goods. And if you if you were late, your customer would have chased you. So if they're late paying you, you're entitled to chase as well. And that's just, as you were saying, being professional. There's nothing rude about it, or it is just really a professional services and the business transaction that you were mentioning. And I'm just going to mention as well the couple of past masterclasses that we've hosted, because they really go into details on how to get those steps right, how to start the relationship with the customer right, how to understand exactly their invoicing process, who to talk to, where to send the invoice to, how to establish those relationships to make sure at the end of the day you're getting paid on time, and hopefully faster than that as well. So yeah, if you want to have a look, all the masterclasses are online, and I'll send the links as well in a minute on the chat box. But to go a bit further down into your tips and practices that are everyone, all small business owners can put in place now. What's your tips around how to escalate properly, and especially not stop procrastinating? Because as you were saying, you mentioned a few people you've been chatting to are just hoping that the invoices will eventually get paid. But what's your tip to stop this kind of procrastination, really?
Well, I think just following on from the previous point, a sale isn't a sale until it's been paid for. And if you've supplied some goods or products to somebody and they haven't paid you, that's no different from you or I walking to Sainsbury's, picking up a box of cornflakes and walking out without paying for them. That's effectively what happens when someone doesn't pay you. So this isn't about anyone doing you a favor in paying you. This is just the transaction which needs to be completed. And if it isn't, then effectively they've stolen from you. And that can't be right. So that's why you've got to treat it so seriously. I think in terms of not procrastinating and getting on with it, first of all, I would say always do what you say you'll do, and do it when you said you'd do it. So if you say to somebody, I ring them today and I'll say, I'll ring you on Friday to make sure that the invoice has been processed, then ring them on Friday. Never leave it until Monday or Tuesday, because they will remember you said Friday and they'll know that they can always build leeway in. So always be doing what you said you do. If you're supplying goods or products or services, there's no reason why, if you haven't been paid, you shouldn't withdraw delivery of the next order, or you shouldn't withdraw your service and not turn up for the next appointment if you haven't been paid. But if you say you're going to not provide service or product, then don't provide it. The worst thing you can do is say you're not going to and then carry on regardless, because that just makes you look like a soft touch. So always do what you say you'll do. Always do it when you said you'd do it. And use every possible contact and route you can to get paid. When we talked about the how question, one of the things I said was finding a contact within the accounts team that you could make a friend, so that when you didn't get paid, you knew who to talk to, and you got someone you were building a relationship with. So use that contact if you've got it. Talk to them to find out. If your invoice hasn't been paid, talk to the person that placed the order. They may not have any involvement in processing the invoice, but they can influence internally. Or the invoice might be sitting in their in tray and they haven't approved it yet. So it's always worth talking to them. But look for other contacts in the organization as well. I remember a guy that I knew back in the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. He was in the interior design business. And he said to me, we knew we were going to catch some bad debts from contractors that went bust, and we needed to minimize that. And he said, we sat down and looked at what we could do. And we decided that each Monday morning, we would look at a list of every overdue invoice. We would look around the table and say, who knows this customer the best? It might be our managing director, it might be our contracts manager, it might be our purchasing director. Whoever it is, they will talk to their contact and say, is there a problem? And a number of times, Rob said to me that they've been paid a week or two before a business went bust, simply because they got in there first. So use contacts you've got that you can exploit. Look on LinkedIn. If you do a search by business on LinkedIn, you can find the people that work for that business. You can look for the finance director or the procurement director or somebody that might be useful to talk to and can help you get paid. Don't be afraid to use that avenue. Send someone a message on LinkedIn. Just ask them. It's a really good way. Look at Twitter. I know businesses have very successfully used Twitter to chase payment. You need to be careful about how you do it. You don't want to alienate your customer, but you can use it as a way of escalating if they're really being difficult. I was driving down the road the other day, and someone had put a banner up on the side of their building that said, don't sell to XYZ Limited, they never pay you. And it was a local business, and they just were so fed up with not being paid, they just put this banner up. I have no idea what impact it had. I suspect they're not still talking, but you know, it's a good way of drawing attention, and just find out what you can about the business, see who you can talk to, and if you can find out locally that they're in trouble and they're likely to go bust soon, then don't be afraid about upsetting anybody, because it's, you know, they're going to go bust anyway. So get in there, get first. If you can get paid before they go bust, you'll get, you know, 100p in the pound rather than a penny in the pound from a liquidation. So, you know, if you know intelligence is telling you that that business is going to be in trouble, then just get in there and really go for it, and push really hard. And if you're getting nowhere, then escalate. And don't be afraid to escalate, and don't delay escalating. Use a collection agency, a debt collection agency that specializes in business-to-business debt to collect for you. Often they can do it. Many solicitors offer a really cheap service of a letter before action, where they'll just send a letter to your customer saying, we've been instructed by your supplier because you haven't paid. The Small Business Commissioner that I used to work for has a team specializing in supporting businesses that haven't been paid and will get involved. But if you're getting nowhere, the chances are you're going to carry on getting nowhere. So you need to utilize the help of an expert, whether that's a debt collection agency, a solicitor, the Small Business Commissioner, or somebody else. Don't be afraid to escalate and use help.
Great. No, that's amazing tips, Philip. Thank you so much. And just to summarize a tiny bit as well, because I think in our past masterclass as well, we've talked a lot about how to establish that great communication and relationship with your clients. So really, because I think, you know, this is the 5th episode, and it's about the overdue invoice and how to escalate and really get those invoice paid. But I think for the past 4 masterclasses, it's important to remind everyone we've really talked about how to establish that good relationship from day one with the customer, to make sure, you know, you get the right information on the invoice to the person that needs to receive the invoice, that you know who to talk to in the business, just to hopefully not get to the stage where you need to escalate. So one thing to remind everyone as well, if they want to watch our previous masterclasses. And in terms of chasing as well and escalating, would you recommend going onto social media? You mentioned Twitter and LinkedIn. If you're getting nowhere with your previous route of communication, which we will assume was either email or phone.
Yes, I mean, I think that businesses are very nervous about social media. You know, they have people watching everything that's said about them, and there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't politely, you know, say something about not being paid an invoice that should rightfully have been paid. You need to be sensitive about how you do it, and you need to think about it, but do. And I didn't say, and I probably should have said earlier on, that email is a great way of chasing debt, but phone is by far the best. So
Right.
never be afraid to pick up the phone and talk to somebody. And you just really articulated this well. But in an ideal situation, someone will have come to you and had a conversation about you supplying them with something. You'd have had a chat, you'd have built up a relationship. You'll have got to the point where you've supplied it. You'll ring them up and say, was it okay? Did it meet your expectations? Are you happy with it? I've invoiced you, is that okay? Then you'll ring and say, did you get the invoice? Is that okay? And then they don't pay you, and you ring them and say, all the other conversations have been positive, can you pay me please? And they say, yeah, really sorry, will do. That's all around the communication piece. And good credit management is absolutely about communication, at every level. So, and if you start that process way back, when you first talk about taking an order, that's so much easier at this stage when you haven't been paid. If it's all faceless until now, then you're it's all around, protocols and emails and formalities and stuff. Whereas actually, if you've had conversations all the way through, you've got relationships you can build on. And that's really, really important. So you're absolutely right, communication is fundamental.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for all those brilliant tips, Philip. And before we move on to the Q&A, so by the way, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. We will have a good few minutes to really reply to your questions, that are linked directly to your businesses, or more generic questions if you wanted to. So please don't hesitate to ask this question in the Q&A box. But yeah, before we move on to the Q&A box, Philip, could you please, for our audience, give a recap of this episode's takeaways and action they can take even today to improve their cash flow?
Okay, so I think be on top of what invoices are due and when is my first takeaway. The second one is chase unpaid invoices immediately or before they're due if they're big. And the third one is escalate, don't procrastinate. So take action, move it on, move up the chain if you need to. And in terms of today, go and look at your Tide app, look at all the invoices where it says 1 day, 6 day, 8 days, 15 days overdue. Get on the phone to those customers and just say why. What's the problem? This money should be in my bank account, not in yours. You're stopping my business. And one of the big problems of unpaid invoices, which often gets overlooked, is that there are two. One is that it affects the mental health of business owners, which is often not mentioned, but is massive. If you can't sleep because someone hasn't paid you and you're worried about it, then that's really bad. But the other is that when you're not being paid, you're focusing on an unpaid invoice rather than on what you do best. So you want to be spending your time and your money on, building the business, research, developing the marketing, all the good things that you want to do, not waste time chasing people to pay you. And a quick phone call, immediately it's overdue or the week before it's due, may save you having to make 6 or 7 phone calls chasing up payment. So all of this stuff is enabling your business to survive and flourish. So the tip for today is just go and look at the list of invoices that haven't been paid and spend an hour on the phone just ringing a few people.
Absolutely. And it's taking the time now, if they are overdue or even before, investing those few minutes to make sure to chase before or when they are overdue, to save yourself the time of the constant chasing after when they're becoming overdue. So fantastic tips.
Sorry, can I just say, I think one really good opening line, if you're a small business owner and you're ringing a customer that hasn't paid you, is, can I just check there isn't a problem with the goods I provided? Or can I just check there isn't a problem with the service I provided? So it's not you haven't paid my invoice, why not? It's about, what's the problem with what I did? And when they say there isn't a problem, the natural follow-on to that is, oh, that's odd because you haven't paid me. But it's a much better way of getting to the point when you're talking about payment, rather than confrontationally going in and demanding payment, if you like.
Right. That's a really good way of starting the conversation. So asking, was the services, the goods I provided, okay, were you happy with them? And if they say yes, then you can ask, well, you know, the invoice is overdue. What is happening? Yeah, that's a fantastic way of starting the conversation. And once again, just as you were saying throughout all our masterclasses, it shows that you're professional and that you care about the services you've provided and you care about that relationship with your customer. So a really great examples. Thank you so much, Philip. I'm just going to ask you before we move on to the Q&A to rate the event, 5 being the highest score. If you can rate the masterclass, we'd love to know what you thought about today's content. Thank you so much. I can see a couple of you taking the poll, so thank you so much. If anyone has a question, I can't see a question in the Q&A for now, but please do. Thank you so much to everyone who's rated the event. But yeah, please do ask in our Q&A. You know, if you have any questions for Philip, that'd be great. Until we have some questions, I've got a question, Philip, that I'd love to ask. So, in terms of we've talked about, you know, how to, you know, get those relationship secured, to make sure there is a good conversation and a good just a good flow of communications. What's your recommendation in terms of if you know, if it's a team working with the same customer and one of the team members leave and then that relationship is passed on from another person, or the relationship gets lost? Like, is there anything that can be done to make sure, even though the team is big and different people work with different clients, there is an overview of how each client work and functions?
Not sure I fully understood that question, Val. Sorry, probably me. So are you saying that if you've got 4 or 5 people working with the same customer on different projects, for example, how do you pull together? Is that?
Yeah. Sorry. So I meant if you've got different team members working with different clients, and then owning that conversation, but then one of your team member leaves, how do you make sure to, you know, just a process of making sure clients are known by everyone to continue this flow of communication?
Okay, so I think that's a really important point, and I guess that goes back to the being on top of what invoices are due and when, because as well as keeping a log of what's due and what's coming, you also need to have a log of what's being said and what's being promised. And in terms of being professional and running things properly, when you're at the escalate, don't procrastinate stage, you need to know what was said last week if you're going to follow it up this week. So always keep detailed notes of what's being said. If worse comes to the worst and you end up sitting before a judge around saying why something hasn't been paid, you will be asked for your contemporaneous notes about what was said by who and when. So it's really important that you keep a log, whether that's in a clever CRM system, whether that's on a database, or whether it's in a notebook. But it's really important that you keep records, and then if someone moves on, those records can be passed on, and someone can follow up. And if someone is off sick, someone else can pick it up and follow up, because I said about doing what you say you'll do when you say you'll do it. If I've said I'll ring you next Wednesday, but then I'm sick next Wednesday, the business really needs to have someone else who'll ring for me and say, Philip's off sick, but he's asked me to follow this up. And having a system to do that, diarising it, carrying it forward, is really important. And it doesn't need to be that clever. If you're a small business with relatively few invoices, it can just be a page-a-day diary. Chase Val for invoice of £1,000. Chase so-and-so for this. So-and-so promised payment today, follow up. But just something there that gets you to do the things that you said you'd do. And keeping accurate records is all part of that. It's all part of business, isn't it? You need to keep a record of what you expect, what you'd agreed to deliver, and so on, in case there's any disputes. Similarly, when you're chasing payment, you need to keep records in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And just I think it's just to mention it, because for those of you that are watching us live or later on YouTube and are using our Tide app and our Tide members, we have an invoice assistance tool which streamlines your invoicing and helps you get paid on time. So just wanted to mention it because it automatically chase payments. Invoice match automatic matches your invoice and also gives you 2 free direct debits every month. That's an add-on tool which is £10 per month plus VAT. So I just wanted to mention it because that's a tool that exists. Obviously, our invoicing tool, which comes with your app, helps you as well keep track of all your invoices, as Philip mentioned. But yeah, sorry, just wanted to mention this because I think it's particularly relevant. But I can see a question, which is a really great one. I'll just click to answer it live. So Hazel asked, how do you deal with being given excuses such as illness, etc., in particular non-business customers? We don't want to come across as heartless, but equally do not want to be taken advantage of. I think that's an incredibly important question, especially given the past 2 years as well of global pandemic, which was absolutely new to everyone. So fantastic question. Philip, how would you answer this?
Well, I think Hazel's absolutely right. You don't want to be seen to be someone that can be taken advantage of, and you need the money to support and sustain your business. But equally, if someone is genuinely ill and genuinely can't pay, then you want to be seen as empathetic and sympathetic. And I think the answer here is that you need to have real conversations. So you need to understand where the customer, particularly if it's a consumer, as Hazel suggests here, is coming from and what their problem is. Is it I need a week to pay you, or is it I'm going to be ill for the next 6 months and I'll never be able to pay you? Those two are very different scenarios. So get beneath the surface and understand what exactly you're being told. But in my experience, and this isn't entirely true, but most customers do want to pay what they owe you. There are always exceptions that are out to exploit and try and get something for nothing, but the majority do want to pay. And if you approach them in the right way, then you will be able to find a solution. And if someone genuinely is ill for a fortnight, and they're on the gig, they're on the gig economy, they don't get paid when they're not working and so on, and they're really struggling, then being heartless and pushing really hard isn't going to get you anywhere. If they haven't got the money, you're not going to get it. So it's important that you work with them. And I think, if you are sympathetic and supportive, they're more likely to pay you as soon as they can, and they'll put you further up the list of people that they want to pay. So for my money, it's around listening carefully, making sure that you get the story right, probing, because that will help you determine whether or not they're genuine or not, and then trying to find a solution that works for both of you. Maybe it's some money now and a bit more later. Even a really small amount now just demonstrates a commitment, and by the way, legally recognizes that they recognize the debt is due, so that helps you if it gets more acrimonious later. But getting a little bit of money now and then an agreement to pay some more later. And if the deal is I'll pay you £10 now, but I'll pay you 150 in 2 weeks' time, then make sure in 2 weeks' time you're on the case and following up, as we've said previously. But I think it's around getting an understanding and working with people. If they feel you're working with them, they're more likely to support you and want to pay you. And don't be afraid to tell the truth. Don't be afraid to tell them that you're a small business and you need their money to survive. Val, you and I both remember someone that came to us after a previous masterclass where we had conversations about how they were managing their business and payments in and so on. And for them, it was around the survival of their business and their own personal livelihood. So it's don't be afraid to say that. Often, particularly larger customers, but even small customers, just think you're a business and you won't miss it. Well, that's not true. You need that money to put cornflakes on your table. So don't be afraid to share that and have a real conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's absolutely right. And we're really coming back to the communication point as well, to really share what's happening for you and your business. And as you mentioned, Philip, when it's a small business, it's very oftentimes intertwined and linked with your personal life, right? Because it's your business. So if you have other questions, we'd love to take them. We still have a couple of minutes. I can see in the chat there is some of you that are recommending the different tools they're using to either for CRM or to keep on track of their invoices. I'm just going to paste as well in the chat are the different links, the tools I've mentioned today. So our invoicing tool, that's super relevant, of course, here, that helps you keep track of all your invoices and send customized invoices. You can have a look. I've just put a link to the invoicing future. And then I've also linked to the episode 1, 2, 3, and 4 of our previous masterclasses if you wanted to watch those if you hadn't had a look at them yet. Great. Well, I think this was incredibly insightful. Thank you so much, Philip. Maybe just as a last reminder, to everyone watching us, we can maybe summarize again the three elements for today, Philip. If that, yeah.
So. Great. Always know what invoices are due, be on top of them, always chase immediately an invoice isn't paid, never sit and watch, and escalate, don't procrastinate, move things forward, don't just sit there and watch things happen.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the different tips you gave for those 3 points, to really action on them and get those overdue invoices paid, really. So thank you so much, Philip. As a reminder for everyone watching us live or watching us later on YouTube, we will be, sharing this episode. We have all the 4 first episodes live on the blog, and also Philip, you'll be creating one master blog post to summarize the tips from the 5 masterclasses. So that's a really great thing to be looking forward to.
And if anyone has any questions, then feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or through you, Val. They can get hold of me that way.
Absolutely. I'll be more than happy to pass them along too. So if anyone had a question after this masterclass, would love to help. Great. Well, fantastic. Well, Philip, thank you again so much for today. And thank you to all of you who joined us live. And we will hopefully see you at our following events.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, everybody.
Have a good day.